Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, I think it's important that we echo organisationally and personally your sentiments in respect to our condolences to the family and friends of Noel Donoghue. And this was a tragic set of circumstances. And as you say, it's unimaginable in terms of the hurt and the heartache that goes out to his mum. And I think I take my comments and cue really from the funeral yesterday on that emotion about touching hearts from Father McGinty, and I just think anybody could see it any differently. I do think it's important to stress also my applause for the efforts of the community, which was evident to everybody in terms of how people pulled together in what turned out to be a search for Noah that didn't produce the results that people were hoping for. I can remember each night as it passed as the phone went by my table, was this the breakthrough we would want? And sadly, that didn't prove to be the case. But I think the way the community pulled together, our own colleagues, I was myself on one occasion with Mark, another occasion by myself into Belfast to see both the investigative team and some of the people on searches, and their commitment and dedication was superb. And equally, even at a tragic end, I think the dignity the search team and CSI dealt with this issue was first class. It's not to be not recognised as well about the search help we get, not just in incidents like this, but around the clock from community search and rescue. And I think sometimes their efforts and contribution can be overlooked. I think it's important, though, that we now give the family time to grieve and come to terms with the consequences of this awful set of events. And I know, amongst others, Noah's mum will still have many unanswered questions. It's to reassure her and people close to her that our investigations continue so that we can try and bring some clarity to our last few moments of Noah's life. And if we're able to do that through an investigation or indeed the inquest, that's our resolve. But I think it's also important to state publicly that some of the speculation on social media in particular, and no doubt chattering community, it is entirely unhelpful and, as far as we can see at the moment, unfounded. In relation to broader issues, Chair, it is my pleasure to come back for year two. So I've clipped myself in for another year of challenge and turmoil, I guess. But whilst in the starters blocks, I do welcome your comments around the budget. I know it's a conversation we've had numbers of times, but we are worried about the ambition to put neighbourhood policing at the heart of what we do and this constant uncertainty of how we get there. I think it's important, though, with a future focus, that building on the work that Mark started in another role, we are optimistic that we will achieve the promise of 400 officers in neighbourhoods, in addition to the original footprint, by the end of August. And it's something we can report back to colleagues on when we get to that position. And also, despite the budgetary uncertainty, the work that Mark and I have done, one of the planning assumptions is that no matter what, that pool of officers is sacrosanct, so that we don't want to make a commitment to take it away. And if we are forced to make savings, as you say, to close what at the moment looks to be in the region of 20 million, it may grow, given some other things we're going to talk about in the meeting, I guess, that we recognise that has to be a promise we keep. And equally, how do we start to encourage and evolve the good progress? I mean, I go around a lot and get feedback, notwithstanding the interruption of COVID, about the progress that neighbourhood policing teams are making across the country. We're seeing more foot patrol, we're seeing more bike patrol, and we're seeing more access to communities, which was part of the commitment I gave when I started. So I think that's really good. We will come back to you over the next few months, respecting the summer gap, with more detail on proposals around the need to modernise and change, particularly around how we use digital policing and technology to make us more productive, and also how we get the best out of our people. There'll be a fresh people strategy by the autumn, which clearly we need to share with yourselves, as well as details of new promotions and issues around talent management and building an inclusive workforce, which is clearly one of the key bits of the policing plan. If you take a step back from the autumn, clearly we're also readying ourselves, having gone through numerous operational challenges in the last few weeks, to the change in the licensing environment at the weekend. Alan, through his work, has put extra officers on duty to make sure we can deal with any changes in disorder and violence related to the nighttime economy. And clearly, we're also now working closely with communities to see how we'll deal with the issues around the 11th, 12th and 13th of July. So there's, again, a dynamic policing footprint for that. I'm glad that you've had a chance to sort of soak up the detail of the report, which we've tried to reflect two strands of the fight against organised crime, which is clearly something that is hugely significant for communities right across Northern Ireland, to take assets off criminals, to frustrate their efforts to prey on the vulnerable. A couple of highlights I think we can come back to maybe later, but drug arrests are up by 15%, which I think is really important, because one of the constant sort of nudges I get either on the beat or speaking with people like yourselves is the concern about the effect of drug harm and misuse right across the country. So we are determined in our commitment to do our part in that endeavour. You'll see detail in the report around different bits of operational activity where it's tackling serious and organised crime in the round, paramilitary crime, acquisitive crime, so on and so forth, and some of the efforts we've done in that space. A couple of things, I suppose, in breaking news. We were seeing the seizure of houses in Belfast with the National Crime Agency early in the week. This is part of a closer working relationship with the agency we've developed over the last 12 months. And as we sit here, I think there'll be further announcements being made this afternoon about the results of some quite different operational activity with the agency and arrests right across the country. So by tea time, I imagine that'll be sat in your laps on a phone or on the news. One area of concern I would point out to you in the general narrative at the moment is, going back to your comments, Chair, about killing in West Belfast last week, is we are seeing at the moment a rise in the number of murders we're investigating. And a typical year we'd see something in the region of 20 murders, and obviously every one is one too many. Even partway through the year, we're approaching 14 at the moment. The determination of whether another one is actually a murder or not, so that if we continue at this pace, we'll see a high year in the number of people that are killed, and that's really unacceptable. So that we need to make sure that we've changed policing stance where we need to in communities that feel vulnerable, as you referred to at the start, but also to pay tribute to the murder teams, which often work behind the scenes, and the sheer amount of work they're carrying at the moment, both around investigation, disclosure, or bringing evidence into the courts, is superb, and you'll see some of the detail in the report. Digital policing has clearly been one of the three planks of change that you mentioned in the narrative around a budget. So we've got extra officers, getting more out of those officers by using technology and refreshing our estate. So there's details here around some of the work we did in the last few months around digital policing, how we were able to get ahead of the game in terms of rolling out mobile devices to keep the organisation going at the height of COVID. So we were able to break down all the services you'd happen to see behind the scenes and enable many more people than normal to work from home by the issue of 1,500 laptops to build on that mobile working experience. Alan is now leading on a recovery plan to see how we operate in that COVID environment. And we're also now testing ruggedized, or I suppose in other parlance, police-proof laptops, so that we can capture evidence from people's homes in a far smarter and quicker way. One final thing I just want to point to, and it may be the sort of issues for questions later, is you probably saw in the news at the start of the week and a conversation we had, Chair, is our concerns about an operational issue affecting what, for want of a better word, is our logistics hub at Sea Park. There are a number of different services we run there, one example being Fleet, where we've seen, following inspection work, some significant concerns about the integrity of the roof space there, which Mark McNaughton has been dealing with. I think you've all had a report today that tries to show you the type of problem we're dealing with. But I think, frankly, it's just another piece of evidence that a flaky estate that's falling down around our ears needs some resolution in the medium term, because whilst we are confident we can come to some mitigation around this problem, it just raises the spectre of how long do we have to make do amend, in this case a building over 50 years old with infrastructure that was life expired 2 decades ago. And we're now trying to manage that in the short term, but I know you're keen on seeing how we can get creative by a new, more modern estate to enable our officers and staff to give it the best. So I think, conscious there'll be a lot of questions today, I'll leave it at that point at the moment, and then we'll take queries as we go along.